Well, everybody, John Bornschein here, and this is Cable Lane. In today's Bible study, we're going to learn about faithful wounds. Listen to this. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Found in Proverbs chapter 27, verse 6. It's a powerful text because we can miss the power in it by just simply glossing over it. And we tend to do that through the book of Proverbs. We'll just read each verse and move right on to the next and yet not really listen to it. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. You notice when we do an assessment of how Jesus engaged with people. For example, when he engaged with Zacchaeus immediately was convicted of his sinful choices that he had made prior to his dialogue with Jesus. And he had determined that he was going to pay restitution for his past actions. We don't ever see Jesus tell him, no, you don't need to do that. You've been forgiven, you've apologized to everybody. You don't need to go and pay all that money back. No, he allows him to go through the wrestling of the fact that he had committed infractions against God's holiness with behaviors that were taking advantage of other people. It was sinful behavior. So Jesus allows him to go through that conviction process. You'll notice that he does that even with his own disciples, that when they didn't believe, he convicted them. They needed to believe because after all, they were going to be responsible for the whole message going forth into all the nations, part of the Great Commission, and lives were going to depend on this. They needed to demonstrate their unwavering belief. So he allowed them to wrestle with this. He didn't try to comfort and placate it. No, it's okay. I'm just going to soften the blow and be more gentle with you. Now, certainly, our approach in all of this is important. We need to be able to give the truth in love, and we see that quite frequently, even in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25, that we are to speak truth in love, but it doesn't mean compromising the truth. It doesn't mean softening the blow. We can be gentle in our delivery. 2 Timothy chapter 2 is quite clear on that. We don't need to be arrogant or pride-filled, but rather we're gentle, loving, truth-filled, but we approach people with the intent to help them understand the gravity of their situation. How many of our friends or family are on the conveyor belt headed to hell right now, and we have no concern about that? We'd rather be their friend. We'd rather give them the kisses and the gentleness and the tender conversation and the laughter, but not address the issues of salvation because that means there might be some confrontation involved. And we're told scripturally in Romans chapter 1, verse 16, that we are not to be ashamed of the gospel. Even Jesus Christ tells us in Luke 9:26 that those who are not bold for him, he will not be bold for them. Right? So this goes both ways. As we stand before the court of heaven, he says, I will deny you before my Father because you denied me before men. We need to be convicted about this. So the right approach is not with a pointed finger, but rather with an understanding that the conversations need to be had. And the friend who gives wounds is a better approach than the enemy who actually seeks to deceive or the one who gives kisses and just covers over the necessary conversations. It would be better to be the friend that cares about the destination that your friend is headed toward. So two friends engaged in a conversation, they can talk about sports all day long. They can talk about hobbies and activities and all sorts of things. But if there's a believer with an unbeliever, firstly, there's a situation where there's two individuals who are unequally yoked, even in that conversation. And we know what 1 Corinthians 15 tells us, that bad company will corrupt ultimately. The ones who choose not the Lord will ultimately have their behaviors impact the believer. So this is important to understand that there has to be a mission-mindedness. You should care about their destination. Labor in prayer over them. Seek the Lord often. Ask for the tactics and tools and doors to be opened that the gospel would go forth because the days are drawing close to the return of Jesus Christ our Lord. We don't have any time to waste. So indeed, Faithful wounds are at times very critical in this. We have to be faithful to Jesus Christ to give the gospel message because we have the words of life and lives depend on this. I know this is a convicting one, but we all need that conviction. God bless you, my friends. Take care.